Blind Horizon Part 1. The pressure vessel Natalie Vance lived in the quiet, crushing places where light couldn't reach. As the chief architect for an autonomous marine robotics firm in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, his entire world was built on predictability, structural integrity, and telemetry. His current obsession was Horizon, an advanced underwater artificial intelligence designed to pilot deep-sea submersibles through the pitch-black, treacherous topography of the Atlantic shelf. Leo was intensely private, hyper-analytical, and preferred the clean, binary logic of a sonar ping to the messy, volatile chaos of human emotion. Dr. Maya Lin was the storm that shattered his calm waters. Maya was a fiercely independent physical oceanographer who had just secured a high-stakes grant to map the extreme thermal drops inside the Hudson Canyon, a massive, jagged underwater gorge slicing through the ocean floor just miles off the coast of Long Island. She didn't do quiet, she didn't do passive, and she had absolute disdain for laboratory engineers who treated the Atlantic like a sterile simulation. Tonight, they were crammed into a retrofitted research cabin docked at a remote pier in Montauk, surrounded by blinking monitors and the low, heavy hum of servers outside. A late autumn nor'easter was slamming the coast, whipping the ocean into a black frenzy. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of ozone, stale espresso, and a sharp, electric friction that had been building between them for 3 weeks. Leo adjusted his glasses, his eyes locked on a failing data stream. "The automated navigation array is dropping packets," he said, his voice flat but strained. "Horizon is entering a blind loop. It's bouncing acoustic signals off its own chassis instead of mapping the canyon floor. If the drone doesn't find the shelf alignment in 10 minutes, the deep currents will slam it into the rock wall." Maya stepped up right behind him, leaning over his shoulder to look at the screen. The sudden proximity hit Leah like a physical impact. She smelled of the cold salt air, wet wool, and an uncompromising determination. "Your pristine little AI is failing because it doesn't understand a real ocean." "Leo," Maya said, her quick wit cutting through his clinical detachment. "It's looking for perfect geometric lines and static variables. The Hudson Canyon is alive. It's shifting, violent, and messy. You need to shut down the automated dampeners and let the system absorb the raw noise." Part 2. The sonar Acolio's fingers paused over the mechanical keyboard. "If I disable the dampeners, the pressure telemetry will fracture. We risk losing structural tracking entirely." "I don't operate blindly, Maya. You don't operate at all if you're terrified of a little turbulence," she fired back, her voice dropping into a softer, emotionally raw register that caught him completely off guard. She reached down, her warm hand gently but firmly covering his cold fingers on the keyboard. "Look at me, Leo." He turned his head. Her hazel eyes were brilliant in the harsh glare of the terminal, reflecting the blue and green data tracks. There was no corporate veneer here, no safety net. She was entirely exposed, demanding that he meet her in the deep water. "Stop trying to build a perfect shell around everything," she whispered, her gaze dropping to his mouth for a fraction of a second before locking back onto his eyes. "Sometimes the only way to find your bearings is to trust the echo of the crash." Before he could calculate a response, a massive wave slammed into the pier. The research cabin shuddered violently. A loud, metallic snap echoed from the dock as the primary generator cable severed under the strain of the storm. The bright overhead fluorescent lights died instantly. The room plunged into a deep, velvety oceanic darkness, lit only by the low-voltage sapphire glow of the auxiliary backup batteries. The steady hum of the main computers whined down into a dead, heavy silence, leaving only the fierce, rhythmic drumming of the freezing rain against the glass. Part 3. Navigating blind. Temperature in the cabin began to plummet immediately. Maya shivered, her breath forming a faint white plume in the sapphire shadow. Leo watched her, the rigid, logical defenses he had spent a lifetime constructing suddenly feeling fragile, porous, and utterly useless. He stood up, stepping out from behind his desk. Without a word, he unzipped his heavy canvas deck jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Maya paused, catching the edges of the jacket. The fabric carried the heat of his body and the scent of clean cedarwood. She looked up at him, her sharp tongue failing her for the first time. The great Leo Vance, executing an unprogrammed act of human warmth. Do I need to log this in the data sheet? Shut up, Lynn, Leo said. His voice was low, raspy, and thick with a raw, undeniable hunger that had nothing to do with engineering. Make me, she challenged softly. Stepping directly into his chest, the professional distance they had used as armor dissolved completely. Leo reached out, his large hands catching her waist, pulling her flesh against him. When his lips met hers, it wasn't a tentative exploration, it was a deep, possessive reclamation of everything they had been denying since they met. Maya let out a soft, breathless sound against his mouth, her arms tangling around his neck, pulling him down with a desperate urgency. They moved together through the sapphire dark, guided entirely by touch, pressing back against the heavy steel blueprint table. The heat radiating between them was staggering, a fierce contrast to the freezing gale howling outside the walls. Every touch was unfiltered and raw. Leo's hand slid beneath her sweater, his palms tracing the smooth curve of her ribs, finding the erratic, racing beat of her heart. Maya pulled him closer, her fingers digging into his shoulders, anchoring herself to him as if he were the only solid thing left in a drowning world. In the darkness, stripped of data, metrics, and code, they were navigating completely blind and, for the first time in his life, Leo wasn't afraid of the fall. Part 4. The surface signal hours later. The storm outside began to spend its fury, its violent roars settling into a steady, muted drone. Inside the cabin, the sapphire monitors suddenly pulsed with a clean, synchronized light as the automated recovery system completed its cycle. They were sitting side by side on the narrow equipment bench, wrapped together in the heavy canvas jacket, their fingers tightly intertwined. Maya looked up at the main console. A clean, unbroken green line was rendering across the screen, detailing the beautiful, chaotic topography of the canyon floor. The telemetry stabilized, she murmured, a soft smile touching her lips. Horizon found its way out of the loop. Leo didn't look at the monitor. His eyes were entirely on her, his thumb gently tracing the soft skin of her wrist, feeling the calm, steady rhythm of her pulse. The software didn't fix itself. Maya, Leo said softly, his voice echoing in the quiet room. I turned off the dampeners before the power flipped. The system learned how to map the canyon because it stopped fighting the noise. It listened to the echo. Maya leaned her head against his shoulder, letting out a long, contented breath as the first pale, golden light of dawn began to bleed through the eastern window, scattering the darkness over the Atlantic. And what did the echo tell you? Leo pulled her closer, kissing her forehead, his heart completely unprotected. It told me that the deepest waters are the only ones worth diving into.